Based on the plot of the game, in 10 years, the Federation Kingdom of the East was going to get wrecked. And guess who was going to do it? The five great sins. These weren't regular people. First, there was a woman with crazy white hair and red lightning energy, a spooky shadow person, a mysterious lady with a glowing green book, a girl with cat ears, and this intense guy waving a staff made of blue power. All of them looked like trouble. Then the planet just kind of exploded underneath them, leaving nothing but a dead wasteland. Yeah, that was the plot of the game. And inside a super fancy mansion, there was our MC. He was sitting at a giant desk with like a mountain of papers. The protagonist was thinking that to stop this whole crazy world-ending thing, he had actually become the patron for those 5 great sins. But he also thought that he did not sign up for this much drama. He was in over his head, for sure. But that's the future. The start of the story was here. Inside this amazing mansion, our protagonist, whom everyone in this world called him Alan, just sat on a big soft sofa, pretending he was reading a book. Alan started thinking about his old life. He said he used to be a normal dude working 78-hour weeks, which, by the way, is nuts. Then, suddenly, he just popped into the body of a noble in a fantasy land. Was that good? Well, kind of. He was shocked to be isekai'd like a cliché fantasy manhwa. But looking at the book in his hand, Alan had no idea what the book displayed, so he just looked confused. The butler told him that he was holding the book upside down, and Alan realized he couldn't even read their language. He was illiterate. Plus, he didn't get any cool superpowers like any other protagonist. That sucked. But fuck yeah. Later, in the massive dining hall, he got presented with the fanciest meal ever. The butler called him Young Master and told him everything was ready. Alan was so happy he just stuffed his face, cheeks all puffy. To be this rich? Yeah, this was so good. Bye-bye useless works in his previous life. Then, the maid waited to see if he was finished and offered to help with his bath before bed. So, Alan went into this giant golden bathtub where 2 maids washed him. At first, Alan looked freaked out by all the attention. But then he just relaxed, thinking that being spoiled like this was actually pretty awesome. He said he didn't even know where he was now. But he doesn't care. At least he has all the money to live like a king of Dubai in this life. Suddenly, the maid mentioned that the other young masters, Leo and Tonio, would return tomorrow, and told him to sleep early. But Alan had no idea who these guys were. When the maid asked him why he acted like he didn't know his family, Alan got super nervous. After a simple explanation of the family, the name Palacio started echoing in his head. Suddenly, he got chills all over. What the fuck? That name sounded scary for some reason. That's when Alan freaked out, sliding underwater in his tub. He had a total meltdown. He suddenly remembered he was in Psychedelia, a hardcore game he used to play on his handheld. In the game, no matter what, when the 5 great sins showed up, wrath, greed, sloth, pride, obsession, everything went downhill. This world is set to be doomed. Bad stuff happened to everyone. And the Palacio family, the family he was now a part of, well, they were always the first to get destroyed. In the game, the Palacios were all just one big problem. Leo, the oldest brother, was the king of prostitutes. Tonio, the next one, was the king of drugs. Alan was so done he could not believe this mess. This is a noble family of troublemakers that is a part of the subquest before the main episode begins. He was reborn as the extra villain, Palacio House's 3rd son, Alan Palacio. Yikes. That night, Alan was lying in bed, crying. He wished he could go back to his regular job, even if he had to work every hour of the week. He thought that, sure, the food and baths were sweet, but in 10 years, he'd just end up dead anyway. He decided this was worse than not getting paid for months. And the other guys, who fell into fantasy worlds, they always got magic or some crazy cheat power. But Alan? Just a normal dude, total ripoff. Fuck the author or whatever god that brings him here. But then, Alan got an idea. He realized that knowing the future was kind of like having a power. He could be like a prophet, maybe. He decided, hey, why not try to stop the causes of the world's destruction? Maybe if he fixed the 5 great sins early, everything would turn out fine. He thought he just needed to reform those kids before they turned into monsters. Should be easy, right? Haha, Not really, especially since he still had zero powers. 2 months later, Alan was back at his desk, doing grown-up stuff. A tough-looking guy with an eye patch showed up. His name was Evan. Alan explained that they had rescued the orphans from a place that was not really an orphanage, but actually a messed-up human testing lab. They make a new orphanage, and left it in the hands of a girl called Utia. Alan said Evan had serious skills, and Evan was a bit confused because Alan's face, let's admit, was tough to read. Alan tried to smile, but it was painfully awkward. He got zero expression. Alan himself feel like he possesses this body, stopped at the face. Evan explained that Utia, the girl from the orphanage, was strangely powerful, like seriously strong for a kid. Alan decided to just let her stay at the orphanage, even though it looked like he didn't care. But that was part of his plan. In the game, Utia would sign a deal with some scary creature and turn into Wrath, one of the 5 great sins, who would go on to destroy everything. But, he figured, if she just grew up happy, then maybe she'd never become Wrath. That seemed like a good plan for now. He then made up a reason to leave Utia where she was, and told Evan to make sure nobody talked about it and to give Utia plenty of money. He also handed over a letter for Utia. Evan asked if it was important, and Alan said it was just to check on her, but actually, he filled the letter with special game quotes he remembered from the story about the sin of Wrath. In the game, whenever someone tried to calm down Wrath using the spell words, it always failed. Wrath would go wild anyway because she said it was too late, but Alan hoped this time would be different. Finally, at the orphanage, Evan handed Utia the letter. She felt super sad, like why didn't Alan want her close by? Suddenly, she released this insane blast of red and black magic, and Evan started sweating bullets. This was insane for him. Manifesting mana in this form is only possible in the Master Realm. Who the fuck is this crazy-ass girl? But then, when Evan repeated that Alan said it just wasn't time yet, her power faded. Utia read the letter, saw the weird quote, and felt a sense of peace. The quote was, "Keep this in Companion of Darkness, Tomb of Light, 1 core, and 1 belonging." Pink energy surrounded her, and she started to smile, thinking this was a special promise just for her. She said she got what he meant, and she would do her best. Alan was the one who saved her from hell, and she will gladly follow his master words. Yeah, she was the first villain who would destroy this world. Sin of Wrath, Daughter of Monsters, Bloody Queen Utia. Sounds pretty metal. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Alan was sleeping like a baby. Even in his dreams, he felt like he bought himself more time to enjoy his cushy new life. The moon outside shined bright, almost like it was cheering him on. Alan decided he'd keep working hard on saving the next kid. Bro, this seems like one of my best anime called Overlord. Both of the anime and this manhwa have same kind of misunderstanding. I love it, and this was just the beginning. The next day, Alan was in a massive library. He was crawling around, seriously desperate, digging through books. He was just mumbling to himself, totally stressed out. He was looking for any clue about the 3rd villain boss. But honestly, his brain felt like it was about to explode. Right then, Evan walked in and brought news. He told Alan that they managed to rescue the 2nd child Alan talked about. Alan jumped up, super eager, and asked if they treated the child really nicely because that part was mega important. Evan said yes, and he explained how they saved the kid from an illegal slave market. Suddenly, Tonio Palacio showed up, kicking the door, looking like he just owned the place. Tonio made fun of Alan for trying to read, even though everyone knew Alan totally sucked at reading. He grabbed Alan in a headlock just to be a jerk. Alan wasn't about to fight, though he wasn't stupid. His brothers were scary. He quickly bowed down and asked for forgiveness. Bro, our MC doesn't have any pride. Tonio then stepped on Alan's head and kept mocking him. Suddenly, a dagger pierced the wall around them. Things got even more tense. Leo Palacio, the oldest brother, stormed in. He shouted at Tonio and said he didn't want any bloody messes in the library, and also said he stunk of drugs. Those 2 brothers just stood there, ready to throw hands and see who was the bigger boss. Alan crawled out from the library, thinking these guys were way creepier than he remembered from the game. He realized his scummy brothers weren't just losers, they were actually dangerous. Big deal villains fighting to become the family head. There was Leo, the king of prostitution, and Tonio, the king of drugs. Alan knew he had to stay far away from both if he wanted to keep his chill and comfy life. He just straight up ran away, while the fight inside kept booming. With new determination in his eyes, he decided he was totally fine living as the weak, dumb, useless child of the family. Later, he was just flopped on a fancy couch, being super dramatic about his life. Evan watched him, kind of confused. Evan thought Alan was a weird guy, because he somehow kept finding out about secret, illegal stuff, even beyond their own region. Yet the guys kept the low-profile mode and didn't even have a single drop of pride. Evan just didn't get it. He could not understand Alan at all. Evan finally asked why Alan sent the rescued child to the orphanage, but Alan just sighed. The child Evan rescued wasn't any regular kid. He was actually Deus Macalian, the second boss from the game. Dude, Deus was the future sin of sloth. In the game, after being passed around and abused like trash, Deus used to destroy entire kingdoms in the most horrible ways. Gamers always freaked out at how scary this part got. Like a real gore game. Despite his name Sloth, in reality Deus worked harder than anyone and always paid people back, good or bad. That was why Alan basically told Evan to treat Deus extra gently. No way was he trying to make that guy mad. He told Evan that he sent Deus to the orphanage because it wasn't time yet. Evan wasn't surprised by that. He knew his master was going to say that classic line again. He also asked if the letter Alan sent to Utia was about Deus too. Alan said yes, and explained he told Utia to take care of this slightly sick child he was sending. That night, at the orphanage, Utia found Deus by himself. She seemed strangely nice and a bit creepy at the same time. She looked at Deus and called him broken, said she could tell what happened to him. She also said that the Great Moon, a.k.a. Alan, had chosen him now and congratulated him in her weird way. Utia told Deus that if he followed orders, he could use his new powers and get his revenge. Pink and purple energy started to swirl all around them as their power grew. She then looked at Alan's letter. She thought it was time to send her first reply with a little greeting to her master. Bro, the misunderstanding just keep getting bigger. Back at the mansion, Evan burst into Alan's office looking totally panicked. He was shouting that there was big trouble, and Alan was only interested in finding the third villain boss again. Classic. He doesn't remember where the fuck that child is supposed to be. Evan tried to explain that the scum wait. The second young master was in trouble. Alan was shocked to his core when he heard Tonio was dead. He could not believe why it happened so fast. Suddenly, they were at a funeral. Tonio was lying in an open casket with blue flowers, literally died. Their dad just slumped in a chair with two ladies, acting super bored. They didn't care at all. One girl even said she just wanted food, and the other said it was boring. Alan watched his family and thought they were messed up, but this was too much even for him. Tonio had died from an accidental fall. That was not how things happened in the game. He remembered how Leo screamed in the game, trembling because he accidentally killed his brother. But now, Leo had the world's biggest smiley face. He was not even bothered to hide his feelings, as he said how lucky he is. Alan was sure Leo or his friends were the real reason Tonio fell. Still, he doesn't care, and tells himself to just focus on dealing with the 5 great sins and not get murdered by them. 1 year later, the situation changed. Leo solved the problem of who would lead next as the heir of the family and took over all of Tonio's drug business. The whole county was much more peaceful now, weirdly enough. Time passed. Now, Alan and Evan were just sipping tea and relaxing in Alan's private room. Alan explained that he and Utia had become pen pals. If he kept those letters going, it could help him a lot later. He read Utia's latest letter. She wrote that Yuna was great at hide-and-seek, Aiden loved playing war games, and Deus was growing up well and liked to do puppeteering. Alan said these kids seemed pretty normal if you didn't know their backstories. Evan noticed there were more and more names in the letters. He was surprised at how that little orphanage kept getting more kids and more sponsorships. Alan agreed, but figured as long as everyone was safe and happy, it wasn't bad. Evan had another bit of news. While Alan was desperately searching for clues about the third villain boss, the Information Guild found something. Alan was so glad he hoped it was finally the ancient book about that boss. Things were looking up, at least for now. But not everywhere was peaceful. That night, far from the mansion, 2 men from Leo's group were walking through a snowy courtyard at a drug site called Margot. They talked about how generous the eldest Palacio brother was, handing out huge rewards and building a giant organization. But, out of nowhere, one of the men suddenly froze. He looked freaked out. His own hand started moving on its own. He pulled a sword without meaning to and attacked the other man. After that, he even stabbed himself. Standing in the darkness, Deus was controlling them both, moving his fingers with purple energy threads like they were his puppets. He said he liked today's puppet show. Utia was there too, on a rooftop, watching everything. Deus asked if there was any point in killing these guys, since he didn't know if it had anything to do with getting his own revenge. Utia told him it was totally helpful. They needed to clean up the place so Alan could return. They couldn't let the place look trashy for their master, right? In the end, Deus agreed. They released a bunch of crazy energy and wiped out the whole drug site. Udia finished it up by saying everything would go as Alan willed it. She said their group, the Blue Moon, would be Alan's sword. They then leave after carved a moon symbol into the street like that aliens do when they steal our crops. Man, things were just getting more and more insane. Alan tried to play it safe, but crazy stuff kept on happening anyway. Dude really couldn't catch a break. Now, it's been 2 years since Alan and Utia started writing letters to each other. Time just flew by. One day, Evan was wandering around the giant mansion looking for Alan, calling out his name. He finally found Alan hanging out in the backyard, practicing magic or something, just waving his hands and looking all concentrated. Evan shared the good news. The last kid that Alan needed to find is now staying in the orphanage. Alan couldn't believe it. All 5 deadly sins had been found and safely brought to the orphanage. He thought about how, in just 2 years, he had actually managed to save all the remaining deadly sins from their sad fate. That was insane. He got so happy he started feeding cake to Evan, and even started tossing macarons and making Evan do tricks for him, just like he was a dog or something. That's funny as hell. Alan said he had some trouble finding greed, the 3rd sin, but he managed it by getting Evan to do detective work using his gamer knowledge. He was totally hyped and told Evan that now he could finally rest. Evan asked if all this business was just for taking care of the orphanage. Alan said yep, that was it. Evan said that was a relief, but also asked if Alan was really happy since Alan didn't look it. Alan said he was smiling right then and pointed to his mouth, but there was only a tiny little crease. Evan saw that and thought, well, if Alan called that a smile, he wouldn't argue. Later on, Alan lay down on the ground and stretched out. He started thinking out loud that things had gone way better than he ever expected. The deadly sins, those bosses in the game, only became monsters because their pasts were so messed up. Saving them before that happened was super hard, and Alan always worried he'd be too late, that he'd rescue them after they were already ruined. But now he felt a lot more relaxed about it. He wanted to know how things were going at the orphanage. Evan said things were running smoothly, as usual, and gave Alan a new letter. Evan remembered how the kids used to seem like broken dolls, but now they looked much happier and full of energy. Alan said maybe they wouldn't need to hire an extra caretaker after all. He was surprised by how good Utia was at this job. He guessed that, because of her own rough past, she was extra attached to the orphanage. After all of this and how they kept sending letters, Alan started to think Utia was actually a pretty nice girl in some ways. Yeah, bro, not a chance. Evan wanted to know if the letter said anything important, but our boy said, not really, it just said everyone was okay. Some kids were growing faster than others, but there was no need to worry about Deus at all, and everyone else was doing just fine. It sounded like all the kids were having a blast. Alan felt so relieved. He said that this showed the environment was super important. If you grow up somewhere good, even kids with crazy powers could turn out okay. Evan wondered if Alan ever planned to meet them, since Alan was always making excuses about the right time. Well, Alan admitted he didn't actually want to meet them. He knew, in the game, those sins had really scary personalities as adults. And even though Alan saved them early, he still felt nervous. To make an excuse, he said maybe it would be okay in 5 years. Evan said he understood. Until then, Alan just wanted to keep practicing magic, so he had a way to protect himself. Anyway, Alan found out he could do magic, thank God, and his body was actually great for it. So, he wanted to get stronger just in case those kids went wild one day. Evan then asked Alan if he heard about an organization called Blue Moon. Alan said, no, never heard of those guys. Evan explained that the Blue Moon Group had recently become famous for hunting down all kinds of criminal rings, like they were busting all sorts of shady businesses. Alan just shrugged and said if these people were cleaning up crooks, that was great, and he wasn't worried they'd probably disappear eventually since he never heard them from the game. But Evan added that Blue Moon even killed nobles sometimes, and he was surprised Alan hadn't heard of them. When Alan realized that, he got freaked out. He told Evan to sleep next to his room from now on, just in case. That night, over at the orphanage, Utia got everyone together and said it was time for the Blue Moon Group's weekly report. One girl came up, said she had chopped off all the heads of the slave traders. She was the sin of pride, and her name was Seolrang. She said the slave traders couldn't even figure out who she was, even though her clothes were super flashy. She said she would have spared them if they could have guessed her eye color, but none of them could. Then the sin of greed, her name was Rina, reported that all the corpses from her mission got melted. Bro, these kids were going places. Another boy, the sin of obsession named Raiden, said he finished things in the south, took care of some illegal human testing labs, and turned the bad guys into human soup. Then Utia, acting like a boss, said everything would go according to Alan's will and that they all existed for the sake of the Great Moon. Yeah, so the Blue Moon Group was actually all the Save Deadly Sins banding together. Alan had no clue yet, and man, he was going to be so shocked when he found out they were running around as his personal mafia. But Deus said they had a problem. Utia asked how that could be, since everything was perfect under Alan's will. Damn, she really worshipped Alan at this point. Deus explained he found something bad, a written order that looked like it was targeting Alan. Even worse, the head of Avalon, the troublemaking group, was actually the eldest son of Alan's own family. The order said they were going to slowly poison Alan and kill him after their father died. Utia got so angry, her aura started scaring all of the other kids. She said there was absolutely no way she would let Alan get hurt. Fast forward another 2 years. Alan's father, the Count, finally kicked the bucket, that is, he died, and everyone said it was heart failure. But really, it looked like he just overdosed. Nobody cried, not a single soul. Leo asked around about another big attack from the Blue Moon Gang, and someone told him that the group had wiped out even more men last night. Hearing that, Alan now realized everyone was more careful and scared of Blue Moon. Now this Blue Moon thing started to make him worry, and so the Count's death, without a single person mourning, ended in complete silence. But things weren't so chill. Leo was watching Alan with some really scary, murderous eyes. Like, he was basically shooting daggers at him for real. In Alan's room, Evan asked him what he was going to do next, since Leo was basically on track to become the family head. But Evan was confused because Alan was packing his bags now. Alan then told Evan to pack up because they were going to run for it. Evan was shocked and wondered if Alan was really planning to leave everything behind. Alan said, not exactly just going south for a bit, to a small town called Rodmill. This was all part of Alan's secret plan. As they left, Leo watched from the mansion, looking super frustrated and suspicious. Bro, our boy is so stupid-minded, and I love him. For 3 glorious days, Alan lived his dream life. He made himself breakfast, Evan brought him juice, and Alan couldn't believe he finally got peace. But just as Alan was settling in, he got a letter and had to go back to the family mansion because Leo was dead, bro. Like, out of nowhere. Dead! Alan could not get his head around it. Leo had been stabbed right in the heart. Now Alan had to deal with all the family drama again. He wanted to know what happened to Leo, so he started asking around. But here's the funny part. All of Leo's men freaked out whenever Alan looked at them. Even the maids didn't want to get close. Alan thought this was nuts. He asked Evan if he figured anything out. Evan replied by asking if Alan was the one who made Avalon and Leon as the boss disappear overnight. Alan was just like, dude, what a freaking way. He had no idea what was happening. Flashback time. When Alan and Evan left for Rodmill, Evan wondered if moving to a big city would be safer. Alan said, no way Rodmill was his final stop. He felt like his job was done when he had saved the 5 great sins and stopped all the world-ending drama. Rodmill, with their family villa, had nothing to do with the original game story. He just wanted to relax and live like a real noble for once. Alan got serious and blurted out that everything has a reason, yet Evan pretty much called him out, saying Alan only acted like this when he was completely unbothered. Meanwhile, Leo watched Alan leave. He was considering if he should just kill Alan or not. After all, he had planned to poison Alan after their dad died, but now he didn't really care. Plus, things with Avalon, his secret crime group, were going badly, so it didn't matter anymore to take care of his stupid little brother. But he still told one of his most trusted guys, Al, to follow Alan's carriage. Hearing that, Al asked if his boss meant he should kill Alan. Leo was totally weirded out when Al actually questioned the order he had never talked back before. But right then, Al stabbed him right in the chest. Turns out, Al had a secret. His real name was Hedon, and he was with Blue Moon the whole time. He told Leo that Blue Moon followed the teachings of the Red Moon, and anyone who threatened the Great Moon would be eliminated. Hedon was doing everything for the sake of Alan's safety. Then he kept slicing through Leo while explaining it. Hedon said he could make his own decisions, and had just been waiting for Leo to admit that he was after Alan. He told his former boss that because his words to tail Alan before, Avalon would be wiped from the map, and it was too bad since Alan, their Great Moon, already gave him a chance. But what he does is plan to kill their savior. Bro, poor Leo. He died because of misunderstanding. Back at Alan's little villa, he woke up feeling like life was just perfect, another chill, lazy day. He could sleep in, eat tasty food whenever he wanted. Not a single problem in sight. Evan came in with a letter. Alan almost choked on his food when he read it. The letter said Leo was dead, and the family was asking Alan to come back for the funeral. Just like that, the free trial for Alan's heaven mode was over, and now, everyone kept avoiding him. Even Leo's men and the maids acted like he was a ghost. Evan, with his serious face, asked if Alan was running things in secret. Alan sat in the corner, looking totally depressed, asking himself why everyone thought he was the villain now. Evan explained it perfectly. Alan was the only person who stood to gain after Leo died, and Avalon was destroyed. So, everyone thought he was the genius in the shadows who made the whole thing happen. After all, Alan had the perfect reason and the perfect timing to become the head of the family. Plus, after they left, Leo was murdered, and all obstacles just vanished. It looked like Alan engineered everything. Alan was just like, "Dude, is this fun for you?" He didn't know where to start. Nobody in their world could kill someone as powerful as Leo so easily. There was one organization people whispered about, Blue Moon, the group that hunted down other criminals. Evan said the Info Guild claimed it wasn't them, though Blue Moon always left a special mark in the ground, not just dead bodies. But the men from Avalon were stabbed with swords, and it looked like someone opened the road to hell for them. Alan understood why everyone at the mansion was scared stiff of him now, but in his mind, it didn't add up. Blue Moon never showed up in the original game, and all these supposed weaklings should have disappeared before the story even began. So, who the heck could actually do something like this? Alan was just left there, surrounded by people who thought he was some evil mastermind, and no idea what was really going on. While Alan was stuck in all his new troubles over at the orphanage, Yudia was running her own operation. She checked in with her crew, the other ex-Deadly Sins, now working as the Blue Moon Squad. She asked if anyone left any traces during their latest cleanup. Rinny said nope, and Solrang said it was the same for her, just a bunch of bodies left behind. Deus came back too, saying that all that was left were piles of Avalon soldiers' bodies. Raden added that he cut all the targets in half, just like she wanted. Utia was hyped, saying that now everything was perfect. Avalon, which used to rule the whole kingdom's underworld, got wrecked in 5 days flat. Radan, though, said he wasn't sure it was totally clean. Utia asked what he meant, and Radan handed her a document he'd found with the nobles linked to Avalon. He told her the Altia dukedom seemed deeply connected too. Udia read the paper and said that everyone probably knew what she was about to say. The squad started getting prepped for more action. Raiden promised to take care of it quietly. Utia then calmed down and asked if the Information Guild was still secure in their palm. Rinna said yes, and they were taking care of this business separately from Blue Moon itself. Deus said all the guilds acted the same. They called their Blue Moon action was the work of a hell sword made by a swordmaster. They agreed Rinna would keep tabs on any movements, and Udia told everyone again, super seriously, that the most important thing was everything they did had to stay secret from that person. She had said it 1,000,000 times, so everyone knew. Deus didn't fully get it, he wondered, why someone as strong as Udia would be so scared just about Alan finding out. but she said they were swords now. They didn't get to have their own thoughts. They just needed to obey. Alan was the moon. If they disappointed him, it was game over. To be honest, Deus found it weird that Utia, with all her crazy power, could still act so anxious, but he decided to just follow her orders. All for the great moon, right? Back to Alan. He was so over this count life. After Leo's funeral, Alan had been stuck with a non-stop mountain of work for a whole month. The job was endless. He just wanted to eat snacks and loaf around like a real noble. And get this, Leo's death was supposed to be like 6 years away, according to the original timeline. But now that everything changed, Alan got all the family chores dumped on him at once. Also, he noticed something weird. Whenever he called for people, they didn't just come, but they did show up in droves to drop off extra paperwork. He figured everyone was working hard because they thought Alan was the super scary mastermind behind all the family deaths. He just wanted to quit, bro. Alan wished everyone would be more independent so he could go back to his easy life. At night, Evan was shocked that Alan had managed to reach second-tier magic after only 2 years of practicing on his own. That was crazy talented, since most people needed 4 years and a bunch of teachers. Magic took natural skill too. Alan wasn't surprised, he said. He had a bit of talent and had worked hard, but honestly, he was just desperate to survive. He wanted to be able to defend himself. But here's the problem. Alan's manhwa, the thing that held his magic power, was freakishly tiny. No matter how much he trained, he would never be able to level up like a real wizard. So he felt like all this effort might be useless. Evan suddenly brought up the real exciting news. An invitation to the ball was finally here. Alan was confused, but then ended up dressed up and on his way to the event with Evan. He was already tired just thinking about it. This was a big nobles' ball in the southern Asteria kingdom, where aristocrats from all over got together. Alan knew he was about to be made a count, so he thought maybe this was a good place to network and score some peace for his future, if only he could make some decent connections. You'd think, right? But every time Alan tried talking to the fancy nobles, they just turned and ran for their lives. Evan told Alan not to let it get him down, but Alan just shrugged and played it cool. He figured everyone avoided him because he was low class, a troublemaker compared to his legendary great-grandfather. The family's current rep was a total disaster, so Alan thought he was just unpopular. Too bad he was missing the real reason. Everyone thought he was some sort of criminal boss because of all the dark rumors swirling around the house. Alan didn't give up, though. He told himself he'd unlock his social skill and practiced his friendly smile. He grabbed a glass of wine, praised how special it tasted, said the aroma was one of a kind, and even said he'd love to buy some bottles for home. But his smile must have looked totally evil, like next-level creepy, because the woman who owned the wine started sweating bullets and took off to tell her dad to give Alan some more. Alan thought she was just shy, but in reality, everyone was whispering that he'd blackmailed her out of rare wine. Evan couldn't help but laugh. Alan put his charm on repeat, trying his act over and over, and all it did was get him a bunch of free stuff. He just didn't understand. The family was way more infamous than he realized. And after the rumor that Alan got rid of his monster brothers, nobody wanted to get on his bad side. Totally defeated, he went outside to get some fresh air thinking this night was rough. When he was walking out, we could see a red girl looking at him with a serious face. But then, plot twist. While Alan was out in the cool night air, he noticed that, actually, one woman was watching him. She wasn't scared at all. Instead, she looked curious, like she actually wanted to talk. Is this the time for our boy's love to bloom? Of course not. The lady introduced herself as Loria, the third daughter of the Duke Altia. Now, Alan knew her family Altia was one of the 3 biggest shadow families in the kingdom, known as the Northern Troublemakers. There was, like, 0 chance this girl was normal. Loria came closer, and Alan thought about it if she was Altia's daughter, but he didn't remember her from the game at all. That probably meant she was already dead by the time the game started. She explained her situation straight up. She needed Alan's help because she was about to get assassinated by her own sisters. The Duke's condition was getting worse, so it was a major fight for inheritance. Alan realized this must be why she got erased from the game's story so easily. But our boy wasn't about to get involved with real trouble. His motto is to keep alive as a wealthy dude. So he turned her down, saying he could barely handle his own life. Loria tried to offer half her family's fortune as a bribe, since she knew Alan was strong enough to destroy Avalon in a single night. But our weak dude said, nope. He felt a little bad when he walked away, especially when he saw how sad she looked. He told her he wished her luck and hoped she found someone reliable to help her out. You could tell he was kind of sorry, but he had enough problems to deal with already. Watching from the shadows, the Blue Moon kids were discussing Alan again. They saw the Altia family approaching Alan, and someone said to tell Utia about it. But Rinna, the sin of greed, said it was fine. Loria was the only Altia who wasn't tangled up with Avalon, and Radon wasn't after her. Deus said that made things simple. The rest of the Altia family would be dealt with soon. Ren said that the team should just follow the Red Moon's orders and do their job, keeping information about Avalon away from Alan. Bro, I bet after all this Altia dukedom bad people got killed, Lauren will think Alan is the one helping her and start to simp him later. But I don't know. Let's see if my guess is correct. Back to the story. Alan, meanwhile, kept walking and wondered if he had some kind of people-repelling barrier on him. But then, the curiosity magnet worked once again. The other woman who had been staring at him at the ball finally stepped up to greet him. Alan was thinking maybe with some luck, he could actually, finally, have a normal conversation with a noble. But as soon as he turned to greet her, he recognized her face from the game. He knew that if someone approached him first, it usually spelled trouble. Her name was Kalia Zenonia. Alan was surprised she introduced herself, since she was actually kind of famous in a don't mess with her family way. The Zenonias were the Western version of his own family, clever, sneaky troublemakers. In Alan's mind, if his family was a gang, Kalia's family was like an undercover mafia. He thought it would be dangerous to get close. But, trying to play it smart, Alan complimented her looks. Kalia thanked him and said she'd love to talk more, but Alan made an excuse they were being watched and he'd rather not make a scene. Kalia, teasing, said he really was just like the rumors and told him she looked forward to seeing him again. Alan was left confused, not sure if that was good or bad. Meanwhile, Rinny and the Blue Moon group were keeping everything under control on their end. She confirmed the Altia situation was contained, but Deus had a concern Alan was being watched again. The team reminded each other to just keep an eye out and eliminate any threats if needed. They knew how important Alan was to them, but also that they must not let things get messy. The next day, Alan and Evan went out on an adventure. Evan asked if they'd arrived at the right place, the canyon Alan was searching for. Even though it was midday, the canyon was super dark and spooky. Alan told him that this was his real goal all along. Evan complained that if it was another dead end, he was going to break down and cry. But Alan said, nope, this one is for real. In the game, this labyrinth was easy to find, and the main reason Alan traveled all the way south was to find the Labyrinth of Whispers. This dungeon had 8 rooms, each with riddles to solve, and if you made it, you got a seriously strong artifact as a prize. Alan knew the routes and puzzles by heart from all his game grinding back on Earth, but seeing it in real life was super intense. The entrance looked freaky and mysterious. Evan said it almost didn't feel real, that someone must have built it for some reason. He asked his boss how he even knew about such a hidden place. Alan dodged the question, saying he had his ways, insisting they just head in before Evan asked any more questions. They walked in, and right away, they saw monsters being crushed by these huge stone hands. Evan pointed out that if they got any riddles wrong, those giant hands would smash them flat. No pressure, right? For our boy? Of course, it's easy. He could finish this dungeon with all his eyes closed. Alan just solving another riddle, like it was no big deal. Evan was starting to lose it a little. He asked how Alan could stay so chill when the place was full of traps, monsters, and who knows what. Evan thought about how they've worked together for 4 years now, but Alan still made no sense. His goals seemed totally random, and most of the time, Alan never even left the estate. But somehow, he always knew where to go and what to do in the craziest places. A couple of minutes later, after all the crazy traps you often only see in the hardcore game, the last puzzle finished, a mechanism clicked, and the final doors opened up. Alan felt so relieved but also dizzy because he'd strained his neck trying to act all cool. He and Evan walked into the treasure room. There were piles of loot everywhere, but Alan just wanted to take the weirdest looking thing, a plain ring. Evan thought it looked super boring, But Alan explained that picking up anything else would only bring big trouble. This ring was the only thing he wanted, the oath of restraint. Alan told Evan there wouldn't be any more danger on the way out. Honestly, it looked super easy. He knew every twist from the game walkthroughs. But Evan, ever the pessimist, pointed out the piles of rocks. He said, "Yeah, those were golems for sure, and golems were never a good sign." Evan thought this was a new, unknown problem and told Alan to start finding an escape route as soon as possible, just in case. But Alan was ready. He walked forward calmly, telling Evan he'd handle it. Evan wanted to trust him, but as the giant golems started waking up and lumbering toward them, he yelled again that second-tier magic would not be enough. Alan just raised the ring and shouted that he invoked the oath of restraint. And suddenly, bam! All the golems froze. Like somebody hit the pause button on the game. It was completely silent. All Alan could hear was a mysterious voice saying, "Oh, Fragment, inheriting the great will of Nyakula, speak the restrictions you wish to enact." Alan was shocked in the game. This part showed up as a menu, not a real voice. Now there was a face too, forming out of nowhere. It felt way too real. Alan knew that the Oath of Restraint was an absorption-type artifact that let the user set limits on themselves in exchange for crazy power. So, the voice told Alan to speak his first restriction. Alan said he would always do the hand signs of Babylonia when he used magic. The voice asked him what he wanted in return. Alan said he wanted the power to twist the laws of the world a little further. The voice said, "Granted." Alan kept going. For his second restriction, he said he'd also chant the words of Babylonia every time he used magic. The voice wanted to know what he wanted from that. Alan asked for even more power, enough to break the rules of the world. The voice suddenly paused, and Alan got super nervous, thinking he might have messed up, but then it worked. The voice accepted his requests, saying he, a human who remembered the gestures and mysteries of a forgotten god, would inherit this power. She even thanked Alan, saying she would be watching him forever. Spooky as hell. At that moment, the ring dissolved into Alan's hand. He was pretty sure the restrictions were set and the power-up was real. Even he thought it was wild. And what the hell is inheriting the forgotten god's will? He never heard such a thing from the game. Back to the moment in the labyrinth, time started up again. Evan was still yelling that second-tier magic was useless. Alan looked at his little lightning spell and realized how weak it appeared. Even pouring all his mana into it, he couldn't do much. But now it was time to try out his new, restricted, hyper mode, the one he'd unlocked by paying his price. He wonders how strong he would get after absorbing this new power.